Captain Zexthara's 6 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as she watched her crew drag the unconscious human aboard their ship. The massive alien pirate stood nearly 8 feet tall, her chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights of the cargo bay. Her mandibles clicked with pleasure as she examined their prize. "Look at this pathetic creature," she hissed to her second-in-command, a serpentine vorthak named Saseth. "The humans think they're so tough, spreading across the galaxy like some kind of plague. But this one will fetch us enough credits to retire on a pleasure moon." The human male appeared to be in his 30s, with short brown hair and what seemed like an ordinary build for his species. He wore simple civilian clothes, a dark jacket, pants, and boots. Nothing about him suggested he was anything more than a regular spacer who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sasethi's forked tongue flicked out as he tasted the air around the prisoner. "He smells of fear, Captain. And something else. Something I cannot identify. Are you certain the buyer will pay what they promised for this one?" Zixthara's laugh was like grinding metal. 1,000,000 galactic credits for a live human male. The Corvani Empire's new gladiator games are becoming quite popular, and humans have developed quite a reputation as entertaining fighters. They're stubborn, emotional, and surprisingly creative when cornered. Perfect for the arena. The rest of the crew, a mix of various alien species from across the Outer Rim, gathered around to get a look at their valuable cargo. There was Grunk, a massive 4-armed Brutalian whose species was known for their incredible strength. Beside him stood Klitatar, a insectoid hive mind drone whose multiple personalities often argued with each other. The smallest member was Pip, a furry squeaker, whose childlike appearance hid a genius-level intellect and complete lack of morals. "He doesn't look like much," Grunk rumbled, his voice like falling boulders. "The stories say humans are dangerous in combat, but this one seems so fragile. That's what makes them valuable," Zexthara explained, her claws clicking against the metal floor. "They're not the strongest or the fastest, but they have this thing called determination. It makes them fight long after any sensible creature would surrender. The crowds love watching them refuse to give up, even when facing impossible odds." The human began to stir, his eyelids fluttering as consciousness slowly returned. Zexthara gestured for her crew to step back as the prisoner's eyes opened. They were brown, ordinary-looking, but there was something in their depth that made even the battle-hardened pirate captain feel slightly uneasy. "Where am I?" the human asked, his voice calm despite his situation. He didn't struggle against his bonds or show any sign of panic. This struck the aliens as odd. Most species would be terrified to wake up surrounded by some of the galaxy's most feared pirates. "You're aboard my ship, the Death's Edge," Zexthara announced proudly. "I am Captain Zexthara, and you, human, are my most valuable prize. You should feel honored. You're going to make me very wealthy." The human looked around at the assembled crew without a trace of fear in his expression. If anything, he seemed almost disappointed. "Pirates," he said with a small sigh. "I was hoping to avoid this complication." "Complication?" Seth hissed in amusement. "You speak as if being captured by the most feared pirate crew in 3 sectors is merely inconvenient." "It is," the human replied simply. "I have somewhere I need to be, and this delay is going to cause problems." Grunk laughed, a sound like an avalanche. "You won't be going anywhere, little human. Captain Zexthara has already sold you to the Corvani gladiator pits. You'll spend the rest of your short life fighting for their entertainment." "I don't think so," the human said, and for the first time there was something different in his voice. Not louder, not more aggressive, but somehow more present, more real. "You need to let me go." The entire crew burst into laughter at this statement. The idea that their prisoner was making demands was absurd beyond belief. "Let you go?" Zexthara clicked her mandibles in amusement. "Human, you seem to misunderstand your situation. You are property now. Valuable property that will earn us enough credits to—" "You don't understand," the human interrupted quietly. "I'm not asking because I'm afraid of what you'll do to me. I'm asking because I'm afraid of what I'll have to do to you." Something in his tone made the laughter die away. There was no bravado in his voice, no empty threats. He spoke with the casual certainty of someone stating a simple fact. "Pip, The small, furry creature tilted his head curiously. What do you mean, human? You are bound, outnumbered, and surrounded by some of the deadliest beings in the galaxy. What could you possibly do to us? The human met each of their gazes in turn, and for a moment, something flickered behind his ordinary brown eyes, something ancient and patient, and utterly without mercy. My name, he said quietly, is Marcus Cole. Perhaps you've heard of me. The silence that followed was profound. Even in the depths of space, that name carried weight. Marcus Cole, the human who had single-handedly ended the Zentari War. The man who had walked into a fortress containing 10,000 enemy soldiers and walked out alone, leaving nothing but ash behind him. The legend that other legends whispered about in the dark. But it couldn't be. Marcus Cole was supposed to be dead, killed in the final battle of the war 5 years ago. The Galactic Council had erected monuments to his memory. His sacrifice had become the stuff of myth. Impossible, Zexthara whispered. But her voice lacked conviction. Marcus Cole died in the Zentari system. Everyone knows that. I let them think that, Marcus replied. It seemed easier than dealing with all the attention. I've been trying to live quietly, but unfortunately, quiet lives don't last long when you're a human in the Outer Rim. Sessith's tongue flicked out nervously. Even if you are who you claim to be, you're still just one human. The stories about the war are surely exaggerated. No single being could do what the legends say you did. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, the temperature in the cargo bay seemed to drop several degrees. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on everyone present. During the war, I was captured by the Zentari 3 times. Each time, they thought they had won a great prize. Each time, they learned why humanity doesn't surrender. His eyes found Zexthara's. The 3rd time, they wanted to make an example of me, to break human morale by showing that even I could be defeated. The captain found herself leaning forward despite herself, caught up in the quiet intensity of his words. 15 billion Zentari lived on that world, Marcus continued. It was the heart of their empire, protected by fleets and orbital platforms, and every defensive measure their civilization could devise. They brought me there in chains, paraded me through their capital city while their people celebrated. What happened? Pip whispered, though something in his expression suggested he already knew. I kept my promise to them, Marcus said simply. I told them that if they didn't release me, I would end their war permanently. They laughed, just like you did. They thought one human couldn't possibly be a threat to an entire civilization. The silence stretched until Grunk couldn't stand it anymore. And then? Then I showed them what happens when you mistake human restraint for human weakness. Marcus's voice remained level, conversational, as if he were discussing the weather. It took me 3 days to reach the planetary core. On the 4th day, the Zentari homeworld cracked in half. You're lying, Zexthara said, but her mandibles were clicking nervously. One being cannot destroy a planet. You're right, Marcus agreed. One being can't destroy a planet. But I'm not just one being anymore. The war changed me, Captain. It taught me things about myself that I wish I could forget. It showed me that when you push a human too far, when you threaten everything they care about, they become something else entirely. Klitar, whose multiple personalities had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up with all 3 of his voices in unison. The Reaper, they whispered. The stories say the Zentari called you the Reaper. Marcus nodded slowly. They did, and if you don't release me, you'll learn why. For the first time since capturing him, Captain Zexthara felt a chill of genuine fear. But she was a pirate captain who had built her reputation on never backing down from a challenge. The idea that she might be intimidated by a single prisoner, even one with Marcus Cole's alleged reputation, was unacceptable. Guards, she ordered. Take our famous prisoner to holding cell 7. Make sure he's secured properly. If he really is Marcus Cole, then he's worth even more than I thought. The Corvani will pay triple for a chance to put the legendary human Reaper in their arena. As the crew moved to obey, Marcus looked directly at their captain one final time. I tried to warn you, he said quietly. Remember that when this is over. I tried to give you a chance to walk away. They dragged him from the cargo bay, leaving behind a crew that was no longer laughing. In the silence that followed, each alien found themselves wondering the same thing. What did you do when you realized you might have just captured the single most dangerous being in the galaxy? Outside the ship, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the drama playing out aboard the Death's Edge. But somewhere in the cosmic dark, other forces were already beginning to move. Marcus Cole's disappearance had not gone unnoticed, and there were those who knew exactly what it meant when the Reaper went silent. The pirates thought they had captured their biggest prize ever. They had no idea that they had just started a countdown to their own destruction. Holding Cell 7 was designed to contain the most dangerous prisoners the Death's Edge might encounter. The walls were made of reinforced duralloy, capable of withstanding plasma fire and explosive charges. Energy-dampening fields prevented the use of most advanced technology, while gravity manipulators could increase the local field by up to 50 times normal. It had held Krexan berserkers, Vorthak assassins, and even a young Titan-class predator from the Forbidden Sectors. Marcus Cole sat calmly in the center of the cell, apparently unbothered by his surroundings. He had been there for 6 hours, during which time he had not moved, spoken, or shown any sign of distress. The guards watching him through the security feeds found his stillness more unsettling than if he had been raging against his confinement. "He's just sitting there," muttered Corv, a reptilian guard whose species was known for their paranoia. "It's not natural. Prisoners should be pacing or trying to find weaknesses, or at least showing some sign of stress." His partner, a crystalline being called Shardak, pulsed with nervous blue light. "Hey now, perhaps he's planning something. Humans are supposed to be cunning." On the bridge, Captain Zexthara was having similar thoughts. She stood before the main display watching the feed from Cell 7 with growing unease. Something about their prisoner's absolute stillness bothered her in ways she couldn't articulate. "He's been like that since we locked him up," Siseth reported, slithering up beside her. "No escape attempts, no demands, no apparent distress. It's unusual. Maybe he's accepted his fate," Grunk suggested from his station. "Even legendary warriors must know when they're beaten." "No," Pip said from his perch atop the navigation console. The small creature's multiple eyes were focused intently on the screen. "Look at his breathing pattern. Look at his heart rate on the biosensors. He's not resigned. He's waiting." "Waiting for what?" Zexthar demanded. Before anyone could answer, the ship's long-range communications array chimed with an incoming message. The signal was coming from deep space, its origin heavily encrypted and untraceable. "Should we answer it, Captain?" asked their communications officer, a slug-like being called Vex. Zexthara hesitated. Unknown calls in the depths of space were rarely good news for pirates. They usually meant either law enforcement or rival crews, neither of which she was interested in dealing with at the moment. "Put it through," she decided, "but keep it audio only." The voice that came through the speakers was human, female, and carried an authority that made the entire bridge crew tense. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Corps. You are currently holding one of our citizens without authorization. Release him immediately, and you will be allowed to depart unharmed." The crew exchanged glances. The Human Defense Corps was relatively new, formed after the end of the Zentari War, but they had quickly gained a reputation for being both highly capable and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting human interests. "I don't know what you're talking about," Zexthara replied smoothly. "This is a private merchant vessel engaged in legitimate trade. Captain Zexthara of the pirate vessel Death's Edge," the voice continued, and the captain's blood turned cold at how easily her identity had been revealed. "We know exactly what you are and what you've done. We also know that you are currently holding Marcus Cole prisoner. You have 1 hour to release him. After that, we will consider you a hostile threat to human security and act accordingly." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "How did they know?" Seth whispered. "We're running full stealth protocols. There's no way they could have tracked us here." Pip's ears were flat against his head, a sign of extreme distress in his species. Unless they're not tracking the ship. All eyes turned to the small creature. "What do you mean?" Zexthara demanded. "What if they're tracking him?" Pip pointed a tiny claw at the screen showing Marcus in his cell. "What if Marcus Cole has some kind of implant or biological marker that allows them to find him anywhere in the galaxy?" The implications hit the crew like a physical blow. If the Human Defense Corps could track their prisoner, then they weren't just holding a valuable captive. They were holding what amounted to a beacon, broadcasting their location to some of the most dangerous military forces in known space. That's impossible, Grunk protested. No tracking system works across interstellar distances without massive relay networks. Human technology has advanced considerably since the war, Klitar observed with his primary personality, while his other two voices argued in the background. They've had 5 years to develop new systems, new weapons, new capabilities. We know very little about what they're truly capable of now. On the screen, Marcus Cole suddenly opened his eyes and looked directly at the camera. For just a moment, it seemed as if he could see them all watching him. Then he spoke, his voice somehow carrying clearly through the supposedly soundproof cell. 57 minutes, he said calmly. The security chief, a many-tentacled being called Writhe, frantically checked his instruments. That's impossible. The cell is completely sealed. There's no way he could have heard the transmission. Unless he didn't need to hear it, Pip said quietly. What if he already knew they were coming? Captain Zexthara felt control of the situation slipping away from her like sand through her claws. She had built her reputation on being the hunter, not the hunted. The idea that she might have walked into a trap was almost too much for her pride to accept. Signal the engine room, she ordered. Full power to the drives. We're getting out of here. Where to, Captain? Asked the navigator. Anywhere but here. Put as much distance between us and this location as possible. As the Death's Edge began to accelerate, Marcus Cole in his cell simply smiled. The next 40 minutes passed in tense silence as the pirate ship pushed its engines to maximum output, fleeing through hyperspace toward a distant system. The crew monitored their sensors constantly, looking for any sign of pursuit, but space remained empty around them. Maybe we lost them, Grunk suggested hopefully. Human ships are fast, but we had a head start. Don't be a fool, Zexthara snapped. If they could track us before, they can track us now. We need to... Every alarm on the ship went off at once. The main screen lit up with tactical displays showing dozens of contacts dropping out of hyperspace around them. Its sleek human vessels appeared as if from nowhere, surrounding the Death's Edge in a perfect sphere formation. Impossible, breathed the navigator. No fleet could coordinate a jump that precisely. The margin for error would be... Unless they had exact positional data, Pip finished quietly. Unless they knew exactly where we would be at exactly the right moment. The lead ship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed the pirate vessel, opened a communication channel. The same female voice from before filled the bridge, but now it carried a note of cold finality. Captain Zexthara, your time is up. Prepare to be boarded. We can fight, Grunk declared, his forearms already reaching for weapons controls. They may have more ships, but we're not helpless. Fight a full Human Defense Corps battle group? Seth asked in disbelief. These are the people who defeated the Zentari Empire. We wouldn't last 5 minutes. Before Zexthara could respond, something impossible happened. Every screen on the bridge flickered, and suddenly Marcus Cole was standing there, somehow having appeared in the middle of their most secure location. He wasn't an image or a hologram. He was physically present, as solid and real as any of them. The crew scrambled for weapons, but Marcus raised one hand in a gesture that somehow froze them all in place. How? Zexthara whispered. The holding cell was secure. You were being monitored every second. Was I? Marcus asked mildly. He gestured to the security feeds, which still showed him sitting motionless in his cell. Or were you monitoring what I wanted you to see? The truth hit them like a hammer blow. Somehow he had escaped hours ago and had been moving freely through their ship while they believed him safely contained. But that's impossible, Writhe protested, his tentacles writhing in distress. The biometric sensors, the motion detectors, the thermal imaging, they all confirmed you were in the cell. Human technology has indeed advanced. Marcus said conversationally, we've learned much about deception, about misdirection, about making people see what they expect to see rather than what's actually there. He walked calmly to the captain's chair and sat down as if he owned the ship. None of the crew could move to stop him. You see, he continued, the moment you captured me, you sent out a signal, not through your communications array, but through your actions. Every criminal organization in 3 sectors heard that someone had taken a human prisoner. That news traveled fast. So, Zexthara managed to ask? So the Human Defense Corps has been waiting for something like this to happen. We knew that eventually someone would be foolish enough to target one of us. We needed an excuse to demonstrate what happens to those who threaten human citizens. The terrible truth began to dawn on the pirates. They hadn't captured Marcus Cole by chance. He had let himself be captured. This was a trap, Pip whispered. From the beginning, this was all a trap. Very good. You're starting to understand. I allowed myself to be taken because we needed to send a message to every pirate, slaver, and criminal organization in the galaxy. We needed them to know that humans are not prey. You used us, Zexthara accused. I gave you multiple chances to make the right choice, Marcus corrected. I warned you. I told you to let me go. You chose greed over wisdom. Outside the ship, the human fleet had moved into attack position. The Death's Edge was completely surrounded, trapped with no possibility of escape. What happens now? Sesseth asked. Marcus stood and walked to the main viewer, looking out at the stars. Now you become an example. Every criminal organization within 100 light years will hear about what happened here today. They'll learn that taking humans prisoner is not profitable. It's not safe. It's not something anyone with a functioning survival instinct would ever consider. He turned back to face the crew, and for the first time, they saw something of what had terrified the Zentari Empire in his eyes. The war taught me many things, he said quietly. But perhaps the most important lesson was this. Sometimes, to protect the innocent, you must become something terrible. You must become the nightmare that keeps the monsters awake at night. The ship shuddered as human forces began their final approach. In the distance, Captain Zexthara could see boarding pods launching from the dreadnought. They won't just capture us, will they? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Marcus Cole, the human they had thought would be their greatest prize, looked at her with something that might have been pity. No, he said simply. They won't. The boarding pods struck the Death's Edge with precision that spoke of countless hours of training and preparation. Within moments, human soldiers in advanced combat armor were cutting through the hull, moving with the coordinated efficiency of a species that had learned warfare from necessity and perfected it through tragedy. Captain Zexthara watched the tactical displays in fascination and growing horror as the human forces swept through her ship. Her crew, some of the most feared pirates in the galaxy, were being taken down without the humans suffering a single casualty. It wasn't just superior technology or numbers. It was the way they moved, the way they anticipated every defense, every desperate counterattack. They fight like they know exactly what we're going to do before we do it, Rythe observed, his tentacles twitching with nervous energy. They probably do, Marcus said from where he still sat in the captain's chair. Humans have been fighting alien species for years now. We've learned your patterns, your tactics, your weaknesses. We study war the way other species study art. The bridge doors exploded inward, and human soldiers flowed into the space like a dark tide. They moved with impossible coordination, each one covering the others. Every angle of attack sealed off before the pirates could even think to resist. The soldier who appeared to be their leader removed her helmet, revealing a woman with short gray hair and eyes like chips of ice. Admiral Sarah Chen looked exactly like someone who had spent her life making the hard decisions that lesser beings couldn't stomach. Marcus? She said with a slight nod. I trust you weren't too uncomfortable? Not at all, Marcus replied, standing to greet her, though I think our friends here are beginning to understand the situation they've created for themselves. Admiral Chen's gaze swept over the assembled pirates, and each one felt as if they were being evaluated by a predator deciding whether they were worth the effort to kill. Captain Zexthara, she said finally, you have been found guilty of kidnapping a human citizen, operating as pirates in violation of galactic law, and threatening the security of human space. Normally, such crimes would result in immediate execution. The word normally hung in the air like a blade. However, Chen continued, we have decided to offer you and your crew an alternative. What kind of alternative? You're going to help us send a message, Marcus explained. Every criminal organization in this sector needs to understand what happens when they target humans. You're going to be the ones to tell them. Chen gestured, and one of her soldiers produced a recording device. You will broadcast a warning to every pirate haven, criminal syndicate, and outlaw organization within 50 light years. You will explain exactly what happened here, and you will make it clear that any further attacks on human citizens will be met with overwhelming force. And if we refuse? Seseth asked. Admiral Chen's smile was as cold as the void between stars. Then we demonstrate the alternative. She nodded to her soldiers, and they immediately began placing explosive charges around the bridge. The message was clear. Cooperation or annihilation. Choose quickly, Marcus advised. The Admiral is not known for her patience. Captain Zexthara looked around at her crew, seeing her own fear reflected in their alien faces. They were some of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, but faced with the reality of human military might, they seemed suddenly small and fragile. We'll do it, she said finally. The recording began immediately. With human weapons trained on them, the pirate crew took turns explaining what had happened. They described how easily they had been trapped, how their supposedly secure ship had been infiltrated, and their most advanced security systems had been fooled. Most importantly, they explained that Marcus Cole, the legendary Reaper himself, was alive, active, and working with forces that made the old Human Defense Corps look like children playing with toys. Remember, Zexthara said directly into the recorder, her voice carrying genuine terror. We thought we were hunting one human. Instead, we discovered that the humans have been hunting us. Every criminal organization that has ever targeted their people has been marked, tracked, and cataloged. They know who we are, where we operate, and how to find us anywhere in the galaxy. When the recording was complete, Admiral Chen reviewed it with satisfaction. This will be broadcast on every pirate frequency within the hour. By tomorrow, everyone in the criminal underworld will know what happened here. What about us? Grunk asked. What happens to my crew? You get to live, Marcus said simply, but your ship is forfeit, and you'll be transported to a neutral world where you can start new lives. Lives that don't involve preying on innocent travelers. And if we return to piracy? Pip asked, his small voice barely audible. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as Marcus fixed the small creature with his gaze. Then you'll discover why the Zentari Empire called me the Reaper, and why that name still keeps their survivors awake at night. As the human soldiers began escorting the pirates from the bridge, Zexthara turned back to Marcus one final time. I have to know, she said. The stories about the war, about what you did to the Zentari homeworld, are they true? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the stars. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of memory and regret. The Zentari took everything from us, he said finally. They destroyed entire human colonies, enslaved millions of our people, and declared that humanity would be wiped from the galaxy. They gave us no choice but to become something terrible in response. He turned to face her, and in his ordinary brown eyes, she saw depths of experience that no being should have to carry. Yes, he said quietly. The stories are true, all of them. And if anyone is foolish enough to threaten humanity again, they'll discover that the war only taught us to be better at what we do. As the Death's Edge was being evacuated, Admiral Chen activated the ship's long-range communications array. The recording of the pirate's confession began broadcasting on every criminal frequency in the sector, along with additional footage of the human fleet and their overwhelming victory. Do you think it will work? She asked Marcus as they watched the last of the pirates being transferred to human custody. It will work for most of them, Marcus replied. The smart ones will find new careers. The stupid ones will give us more opportunities to reinforce the message. Chen nodded approvingly. The President wants to see you when we return to Earth. There are rumors of Zentari survivors organizing in the Dark Nebula. If they're planning something, then we'll handle it the same way we handled this, Marcus said. With overwhelming force applied precisely where it will do the most good. As the human fleet prepared to depart, leaving the Death's Edge as a drifting hulk that would serve as a monument to their message, word of the incident was already spreading through the criminal underworld. Pirates who had been planning raids on human shipping suddenly found other targets. Slavers who had been eyeing human colonies decided to look elsewhere for victims. Criminal organizations across 3 sectors quietly removed humans from their target lists. The message was simple and brutally effective. Humans were no longer prey. They were predators, and they had just announced their presence to the galaxy. In the weeks that followed, human merchant ships reported a dramatic decrease in pirate attacks. Trade routes that had been dangerous for years suddenly became safe. Criminal organizations that had operated with impunity for decades found themselves under constant surveillance by forces they couldn't see or predict. The recording of Captain Zexthara's confession became legendary in the criminal underworld. It was passed from ship to ship, syndicate to syndicate, serving as both warning and proof of what awaited anyone foolish enough to target humanity. But perhaps the most chilling part of the message was its final line, spoken by Marcus Cole himself as the human fleet prepared to depart. "We tried to find peace after the war. We tried to live quietly among the other species of the galaxy. But if you force us to remember what we learned in the darkness between the stars, if you make us become the Reaper again." The recording ended there, but everyone who heard it understood the unspoken conclusion. Humanity had tried to put their wartime capabilities behind them. They had tried to be good neighbors in the galactic community, but if pushed, if threatened, if given no choice, they would remember the lessons of the Centauri War. And the galaxy would learn once again why some legends were too terrible to be mere stories. In the months that followed, as reports of the incident spread throughout known space, a new understanding began to emerge among the various alien civilizations. Humans were not just another species to be conquered or exploited. They were something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had learned to wage war so effectively that their enemies had literally disappeared from existence. The Centauri Empire, which had once controlled hundreds of worlds and commanded fleets that darkened entire solar systems, was now nothing more than cautionary tales and archaeological sites. They had pushed humanity too far, and humanity had responded by erasing them so thoroughly that future scholars would debate whether they had ever existed at all. Now, as word of Marcus Cole's survival and the demonstration aboard the Death's Edge spread through space, every species in the galaxy faced the same choice the pirates had confronted: accept humanity as equals and neighbors, or risk learning firsthand why the Reaper had become the stuff of nightmares. Most chose wisely. Those who didn't quickly discovered that some legends were best left undisturbed. The age of treating humans as prey was over. The age of fearing them as predators had begun.